No,
All right, I'm
gonna
going to hit the record. I'm going to hit the record button. Robert Cofer, the floor is yours, sir. And thank you in advance.
Yep. Thank you, Robert. Hey guys. So Robert asked me to do this, and I'm super clear on a couple of things, right? There's really no right or wrong way to price property. I think there's smart, logical ways to go about doing it, and I think there's dumb, lazy ways to go about doing it. So we're going to try to focus on smart, logical ways. But this is the way I do it. I mean, I picked some stuff up from my mentors, obviously, and I've spent a lot of time evaluating, God, probably hundreds of properties. So anyhow, so I'll give you my best advice, but I would say I don't know how these things usually go, but if you have questions, I'm okay with you unmuting and asking me in the midst of working through something. And if you have comments, share them with me, because I'm here to learn too. So if you guys have anything I need to know, don't be shy. Let's see here. Robert already referenced my technological prowess. So let me, here we go. Sharing screen. All right. And I did a PowerPoint, I'll have you know too. Can everybody see my screen? No.
Did you do a PowerPoint or did Laura do a PowerPoint?
Laura retired, so I did a PowerPoint for the first time in like 15 years.
I thought maybe you got her out of it just to help you. No, we can't share we can't see your screen yet.
Hold on. I got this.
There we go.
Boom. How about now? Got it?
Looks good.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I mean, the first thing that I wanted to talk about is the fact that pricing property, it is a skill, right? Some people are really good at it, and some people are not good at it. And so what can we do to increase the skill? And I think the first thing is you have to make a decision that you actually want to work on it and you want to be good at pricing property. Because I know it's really easy to just kind of like go through real quick, shoot from the hip. But you have to make the decision. You have to spend some time on it, just like any other skill. Number two, I've never taken a class on pricing property. So you guys are, I guess, a step ahead of me. I just kind of tried to figure it all out. So any information you could suck up through, through Robert or Neil or Keith, Matt, Randy, everybody else. I mean, obviously take those classes and learn. Three, I said running scenarios and practicing. I mean, when I first started, I would just like grab a random address and information and practice running evaluations. My dad used to list a ton of property as well. So I would ask him like, hey, what do you have coming up this week? Can I run an analysis on it? And I had nothing but time. So if you have the time, practice. The other things that we talk about, Neil harps on all the time, I'm sure Robert too, but it's knowing your market and knowing the inventory. Some of the best agents and some of my competitors, one in particular, I won't name his name because I don't want to give him a shout out. He'll see it and feel really proud probably, but he knows every listing as soon as it goes in the market. Like he catches me all the time because we're pretty friendly. He'll be like, oh, did you see that one over on 123 Main Street? And I'm like, yeah, let me, and then I look while we're on the phone. So it's not hard for us to just set up a portal, and every time, if you're honing in on, for example, for me, downtown Laverne, I get an email every time a new listing comes up in downtown Laverne, so I know about it. And then physically previewing the properties. I know from, we do the, what's it called, the 5-5-10, Robert. That's for more of a prospecting perspective, right? But it's also super important to go out and see properties. I mean, I was talking to a guy the other day, and he was, oh, well, there was this property over on whatever it was, Caballero or something. I was like, oh yeah, that was the one with the spring running through the front yard, because it literally had a natural spring. And when you say something like that, it's clear to that person, like, wow, this guy knows his stuff. He's seen these properties. So go out and see the properties. It's also really helpful to transact on more properties, right? So if we could transact on more properties, we're going to be able to say, yeah, I sold that one. I sold that one. So just another reason to sell more properties, right? And then the last one is to ask for help. I mean, I think this office is pretty supportive from what I've experienced. I think all of the agents are here to help. So there's somebody in your office who has more experience than you. I mean, maybe give them a little lead time to try to help, but ask for help. And then I said, the ultimate goal for me is, and you guys have probably had this happen, like somebody goes, it could be a friend or family member, like, well, what's my home worth? And if you know that market that well, you could go, oh, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,800 square feet. It's in Bonita Unified School District. What shape is your house in? Okay, it's got a remodel. Yeah, it's probably about plus or minus 850. That's a pretty good feeling when you don't even have to run comps and So that should probably be our ultimate goal, at least in the markets that we're servicing or that we're targeting. Make sense? So then I broke it down, guys, into kind of different segments, right? Before, and kind of the mindset I try to get into when I'm pricing property. And then, during what I'm doing, and actually I grabbed a property that I just listed. So we'll do that live, and hopefully that'll be the time when people have questions while we're actually running a CMA. And then afterwards too, what I'm doing to, I suppose, fact check my work. So number one, I think for the purposes of pricing property, it's a dangerous place to go, but I think for me anyways, it's like conjuring a spirit, but I try to really tap into my analytical mind. And what I figured out for me is, for me to go into, my goal is always to be super confident in any house that I walk into. And for me to be confident, I have to have the knowledge. So if I have the knowledge, I feel confident. If I have the confidence, I'm going to get a contract signed. Yeah, so the tips, I mean, we've all been in those, I'm doing air quotes, but a flow state. To me, a flow state is where you don't have any distractions and where you're processing information quickly. A lot of times, if I have appointments set up on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'll try to get all this done Monday morning and do all of them at the same time, because when I get into that flow state, I could just knock them out and I don't have to constantly derail and try to come back and forth to it. So if you have the ability to knock out multiple at the same time, please do it. Number two is put it in your schedule. I mean, we talk about having a tight schedule and having time for appointments and for this, and I guess we put in their admin, but for me, like I said, I have to do it first thing in the morning, like before the kids are up, before I've had a cup of coffee. I guess I shouldn't say I have to do it, but if I want the results to be the best, that's the time that I do it. The time not to do it is 3 minutes before you running out the door to go take the listing, because I know for sure that happens. But if you're making that a practice, you're selling yourself short. I think that the time before the presentation is the time to jump back to it and just do like a rebrief. And then, you go to the appointment and you're ready to go. The other thing I put is, it's easy to go down the rabbit hole. You could spend 20, 30 minutes. I mean, gosh, I remember back in the day, I would probably get too analytical and I'd spend 30 plus minutes. You really shouldn't be spending, in my opinion, more than 5 to 10 minutes on these evaluations. If that's the case, I don't think you're in a flow state. I think you need to jump out of it and come back to it when you're in a better frame of mind. And then here I am saying don't spend too much time on it, but I also think it's important, even if you could get to the appointment an hour or so before, drive the comps. You could reference geographical markers when you're going through the comps. So maybe if you don't know the neighborhood that good, you could tell your seller like, oh yeah, that one, that's located in the community over by the RV parking, which if I just looked at, Google Maps or whatever, I probably wouldn't have noticed that. So you're letting them know, you're demonstrating that you know the neighborhood well. And then also you'll see things like, oh crap, this agent didn't even They did a horrible job depicting the fact that behind it is a slope and there's a privacy or a view. So if you have the time, drive the comps. So shifting my mindset when I go into these, when I'm thinking about evaluating a property and sitting in front of a homeowner, I'm usually trying to imagine that I'm talking to a CPA or an attorney or someone that's just super analytical. And when I'm evaluating, I try to make sure that I'm not going to be surprised. It's helpful if you know the neighborhood. I mean, Melinda and I just are working on one together right now in Long Beach. That if I didn't, she did the evaluation because that's her neck of the woods. But if I didn't spend time or she didn't spend time to know that it backed up to like a pretty gnarly housing project, I mean, that could affect the value and desirability. So I don't want to be surprised when I get there and find out something that I didn't know, or have the seller tell me something that I didn't know. Obviously, it can happen. It does happen, but let's do our best not to allow that to happen. Number two is I try to think like a buyer. So for owner occupied, I think most of us have purchased a house. It's like, well, try to get into, take your agent cap off and put a buyer's cap on. Why am I buying a house? Obviously, price. I'm looking at something that I either qualify for or I feel comfortable with. But the other is necessities. So, maybe I have to be in a certain city or proximity to work. I have to be in a school district, certain bed bath count. Maybe I have bad knees. I can't do stairs. I don't want a yard to maintain. I do want a big yard. And there's perks and quirks to every property, right? So perks are, and they add value or they reduce value, clearly. So remodeled kitchens and bathrooms, a pool, RV parking, oversized lots. Quirks could be like a weird floor plan. You walk through one bedroom to get through another bedroom. I don't think you're getting the same value on that bedroom. Lot shape. If there's a weird lot shape or something where you have no backyard, just a front yard and three side yards, essentially, I mean, that can affect value as well. So I always try to ask myself questions, right? And you guys may have a different list of questions, but something to think about. Like, so if I'm going to buy this house, if I was going to make an offer on this house on a traffic street as compared to a quiet cul-de-sac, I mean, what's my threshold? If I can save $50,000, would I consider living on a traffic street? The other thing that's really big right now is a lot of people have RVs in my market and probably some of yours as well. But if I'm going to store my trailer somewhere and pay $300 a month, that's a lot of money. So how much more am I willing to pay for a house that has RV parking on site? It might be 10, 15,000. Just depends. I might not even offer on the house either if it doesn't have RV. I can't believe I put badass on this PowerPoint. That was in my notes and I literally pasted that. But if the last house I offered on had a badass pool and barbecue area and this house doesn't, what's it going to cost me to duplicate that? So that's something else, you kind of have to get into that mindset. Before we go on the appointment or before we start pricing, we also want to pre-qualify, right? We want to know what we're getting into. So I think this is probably on everybody's pre-qualifying script, but I think the best question ever, and I try to make it funny too, so it's a little bit less awkward, but hey, if you had to rank your home on a scale of 1 to 10, number 1 needs a wrecking ball, and 10, it's picture perfect model home, what would yours be? And then what would it take to get to a 10? And that's going to allow people to go, well, I would really need to do this to the kitchen. I would need to do this to the flooring, blah, 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 blah. And if I feel like it's a really unique house, there's something funky going on, and I don't really want to get committed to pricing it in front of them, and I can't really get into a tight window pricing range before, I'll usually try to compliment them and go like, hey, your house seems really special. Would it be okay if I was just to come out before our official meeting and maybe walk through it 5 or 10 minutes, take some notes so that I'm fully prepared to meet? Probably not the Mike Ferry way, Robert. So sorry if I'm derailing, but I mean, not every house is the same, guys.
The truth is, Robert is the number of Mike Ferry agents that are on this call is not very high.
Okay.
So, this is more about just anything works for everybody.
Okay, cool. Well, this is what works for me, and I do sell some pretty unique houses. So if I think I don't want to get into pricing it live in front of a seller, I want to be able to go through my process and do it. If I have to, I have to. Fine. But if I have the ability, or thinking that I need to walk through it quickly, do that for sure. Okay. Um, so now getting into the evaluation, I always say to start small. I mean, some houses are like a condo. If there's been 3 model matches that have sold, it's going to be pretty easy to price, right? It's like, oh, okay, here's 3 units that were literally yours exactly, and they priced within 700 to 725,000. So there's your price. Just depends on how the buyers react to it. So in a perfect world, we'll have really similar comps, and we'll have it within a pretty tight radius. But we don't live in a perfect world, so sometimes we have to get creative, and we have to make some adjustments. Let's see here. Oh, I put some thoughts. I'll usually start within a mile radius. I'll usually go plus or minus a couple hundred square feet. Obviously, if it's a larger house, then the larger we go, the more of a discrepancy I'll make in the square footage adjustments. If it's a single level as compared to a 2-story, in my experience, single levels always sell for a premium. So let's say I have a house that's a single level at 1,200 square feet and maybe a 2-story home at 1,800 square feet. I might not make as big of an adjustment just because it's a single level and it's more desirable. The other thing I'll look at too is, we have we have the same city, but maybe there's a county area versus a city area or a specific school district. I know in Glendora, like if you cross a certain threshold, it goes from Glendora Unified to Charter Oak, same city, but Glendora Unified is a much more sought after school district for whatever reason. So, so you have to look at those things. The other things you can look at is whether or not it's a tract home versus a custom home. If it has an HOA or it doesn't have an HOA, obviously that makes a difference too. So let's jump in. Well, here's where we got to shift our screen, Robert, where it's going to get hairy for me. Boom. Are you guys seeing, are you seeing the MLS now?
Yes.
Look at you, tech genius.
That's pretty fast. All right, well, first of all, let me stop real quick because I'm covering a lot of information and I'm probably talking faster than I ought to. Does anybody have any questions so far?
So, Robert, I had one thought I wrote down here as an idea, and you tell me if this is a decent idea or not. You mentioned practice, and you would select houses and practice it. The idea I wrote down was find a listing that just hit the market, do your own CMA on it, and see how your price compares to the price that's on the market to see how close you are to that. And then maybe, I mean, so that's the short term. And then the long term would be follow that particular listing through closing to see what it actually closes at and see how that compares with your original price. Do you think that's a decent idea, or is that too complicated? Just pick a house and price it out.
I mean, whatever you do, just practice. I think that's an awesome way to do it. If you, if you have the time and the patience to track it.
Yeah.
The other thought I had too is you could grab languishing listings, and those are clearly overpriced, right? I mean, that's why they haven't sold, I would imagine. So you could grab a languishing listing, price it, and guess what? It might not be a bad practice either, because if and when that property does expire, you already have a CMA on it ready to go, and you could go, yeah, I remember looking at your house 45 days ago, and here's what I thought at the time. So, I mean, either way you do it, scenarios, if there's a senior agent sitting next to you and they're taking listings if they trust you enough to release an address before before it goes or whatever. But yeah, I think either way you do it, it's practice, right? So just do something.
Robert, I have a question. Why are you going back a whole year for comparables?
Good question. I think the market's been pretty flat for a year. I used to go back and we're going to cover a lot of that. I used to go back as far as maybe only 90 days when the market was like massive appreciation. But in my experience here locally, I have the ability to go back further in time. And for this particular property, who was that who asked the question, by the way?
Monica.
Monica. For this particular property, Monica, it was kind of a tough one. That was why I picked it. It's a character home, not a lot that's transacted. That I mean, every house is custom and different because they're craftsman homes. So for that reason, I will go back a little bit further in time. I'm curious, how far back do you typically go?
Well, right here, the property sell quick. We're in Hacienda Heights. And I go as far as 90 days. I don't need to go that far because we have a lot of comparables, or we have plenty, not a lot, but we have enough. And yeah, but I see your tactic. Good.
What if you don't? What if you don't have enough? You would have to go back or go further?
180 is the max, because I know appraisers, sometimes they give us a hard time when we go over 6 months.
Right. Okay. Well, remember what I said on a couple slides back. I always try to start small. So if I could find something that's transacted, within 90 days, let's say, obviously that's the way that I'm going to go. For this example here, I have to go back a little further. In fact, when I actually ran comps on this, I went back a couple of years, but we'll kind of cover that towards the end in the fact checking section of our analysis.
So Robert, I have a
good
question.
Thank you.
Along those same lines, which do you prefer to use? Going back further or expanding your square footage?
It's a good question. I guess I would probably look at it both ways if I have the time. It just depends. I guess it depends on the day or the time. Who was that? Kevin, right?
Yeah.
Depends on the day or the time, Kevin. And what's better, right? I think probably it's better to find something that's transacted more recently and make the adjustments. But at the same time, if I could go back a little further and see something that's really similar, I think I'd look at it both ways.
Sure.
Because really, and again, we're probably jumping ahead, but I'm going to I'm going to determine a price as quickly as I can, going through, as best as I can, and then at the end, I'm going to go back and I'm going to try to fact check my own work.
Yep.
So I might do it both ways. Another really good question. Anybody else?
Robert, are you using Cloud CMA, or which CMA system do you use?
Yes, I am using Cloud CMA just because it's super easy. If there's something better, though, let me know. Is there something better?
No, I use Cloud CMA too.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm using. I particularly like, there's so many options in there. I think it's probably too much data. So I remove a lot of it for presentation purposes and trim some of the fat. I think for one period of time, Tom Ferry had a bunch of like slides in there and stuff. But I like to use it for the adjustment purposes, and it looks a little prettier, obviously, than if I just print out the MLS full. Anybody else?
Robert, I don't know in which area are you, because I jump a little bit late, but I am in a small town here in Tehachapi, close to Bakersfield. And we have, the experience that I had so far, I use RPR, is the one that is available in our MLS.
Okay.
Yes, and also, how do you do you do the comparables when they are manufactured homes? Because we have a lot of those here in this area.
Oh, I'm probably not the right guy for manufactured homes. I've never transacted on one.
Okay, that's good.
So I'm sorry. I feel like, just thinking out loud, the rules would still apply, right? I think park for manufactured homes, the park rent is, I mean, there's a couple around here and it varies pretty greatly. So I would imagine that would affect value. The park desirability and amenities, I would imagine, would affect the value. And then I know there's some, well, you know better than me as far as, if it's on a foundation or when it was built and all that stuff. I would imagine those would be the big factors, and then the condition. But yeah, I'm sorry, I'm probably not the right guy for
It's
manufactured homes.
it's fine. No worries. Thank you.
All right. All right, guys. So
Robert, can I ask also one question? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
For the zoning, I see that you are working in Orange County, if I'm not mistaken.
I work in LA County, Orange County, San Bernardino County. We're kind of on the cusp of 3 counties.
Okay, for the zoning, I know for the LA County we can use this ZMAS for the zoning. What we can use for the Orange County?
To determine the zoning,
Mm-hmm.
I usually just go to the city zoning map. That may not be the best way to do it, or sometimes if I really feel like I have to dive into the zoning, I'll just call this and ask to talk to the city planner. All right, cool, guys. So I'm going to jump into this because I know we only have limited time here. So this is a property that, like I said, some of the things that I paid attention to was that it was a earlier 1900s homes. It's a Craftsman, so I wasn't going to compare it to any stucco or newer construction houses. It's in a specific neighborhood, right? It's in what I call Old Town Laverne or Downtown Laverne. So that's kind of a specific neighborhood, and I'm only going to look at properties that have transacted in that area. I guess I ought to show you the subject property. That might be important, huh? You guys are still seeing my screen, yeah? Okay. So here's the subject property. Just to give you a quick idea of the condition, fully remodeled. Some things you don't see are like paid off solar panels, which I think does add value because God knows my electricity bill during the summer is $1,500 a month. So if I could eliminate that, that would be pretty big savings. And then like a backyard like this, I should probably jump back to this spreadsheet. Let me see if I could. Are we seeing the whole screen now?
Yes.
Okay, just because I have a slide that I kind of want to reference this now. You'll see here on the adjustments page. I mean, these are just rules of thumb that I've come up with. I don't know if there's any validity to them. I'm sure appraisers have rules of thumb as well, but for my price point in areas, these are kind of good reference points for me. The reason I bring it up is because this particular property, you could tell that backyard it's a sexy backyard, right? It's not a normal pool in the ground with a brick ribbon from the 50s. I mean, they put it in within the last couple of years, and it's awesome. It's got an outdoor living space, a little they call the pub out there. So you'll see here for pool, like a normal pool, I might make a $25,000 or $30,000 adjustment. I put badass in here again. For an awesome pool or yard, I put 50 to 75,000. Right. So, and then for solar, I mean, I'll usually do about 30,000, but to be clear, that's only if the solar is paid off. If there's a PPA or a lien or something like that, I don't really know how to evaluate that, but sometimes it may be a detriment, really, depending on how tight the buyer's qualifications are. So this one does have paid off solar, a power wall, and everything. In fact, I probably could adjust more just because it's pretty much covering the whole system. All right, jumping back to it. So I'm not jumping back to it. It was about 1,800 square feet. Remember, I said I went within a 1 mile radius plus or minus a couple hundred square feet. In this case, I stretched it out a little bit from 1,600 to 21. Obviously, I'm looking in the same city, Laverne. One of the things that I find super helpful that doesn't apply here, but you could toggle on, city versus county areas. It's not toggling for some reason. There we go. And then also the school district, because if there's a line right down the middle, one side's Pomona Valley and one side's Bonita, Bonita's selling for a higher price. It's just a more sought after school district. Anyhow, so couple in close proximity, which is good. There's a property here. You could tell similar type home, a little bit larger, an extra bedroom and bath. Sorry, guys, I'm going fast because I have probably too much to talk about. Another property on just down the street, similar square footage, 1,090 square feet. Again, similar type house, character home. You could see inside it's pretty nice. It's maybe not as modern, but the upgrades are pretty quality, so I wouldn't make any adjustments. Okay, so then I'll jump over. Probably everybody knows how this works, but you'll click them real quick in our MLS anyways. You'll click Cloud CMA, and then boom, it jumps you over to this pretty nice looking page here, in my opinion. If you don't make any adjustments or you toggle them on or off, you'll see on the right, it'll affect the average price, low price, high price, etc. I will go through here. There's actually a section. So when you originally pull it up, it won't have any of the adjustments. So you'll click notes and adjustments. And then I like to come down here and I'll start making my adjustments, right? So I'll say for a pool. Now, this one did not have a pool, and I'm trying to make the value comparable to what I have. So if it did have a badass pool, right, I'd add $75,000 in value. This one doesn't have solar, mine does, so I'm adding 30,000. This one has an extra bedroom and bath, mine does not, so I'm reducing 15 for the bedroom, 10 for the bathroom. Okay. So I'll go through and I'll make all these adjustments. This one, look at this one was a single level. So I said, okay, I'll adjust 5% off the original price. No solar, no pool. This one didn't have a garage at all. I'll usually, if it's a one car versus a two car, I might make like a $10,000 adjustment, but this one didn't have a garage. So I'm figuring probably a three car garage, 20, 30,000. And then I'll just look at the average here. So low range 1,045,000, higher range 1,170,000, and this one falls kind of right in the middle at 1,098,000. So when I go on that appointment, I'm not recommending 1,098,000. I'm recommending 1.1 to be clear. And then when we list it in the contract, I usually do it at 1,099,000. Make sense? Yeah. Oh, we're back to this. So I had those adjustments, and I guess I could send this kind of my cheat sheet. I've honestly never written it down, but if it's helpful, I could send it out. And then, so I had mentioned earlier, after the fact, that's how I'm pricing the properties. Now, after the fact, I check my work. So my dad, Mark, who you guys probably know, has some methods. He will go, okay, I think it's worth $1,000,001. And then what he'll do is he'll actually go into that entire city. He'll open it up. He may go into San Dimas or Laverne or comparable cities. He'll plug in, let's say, $1,050,000 to $1,150,000, and with no other criteria. It has to be single family home or same type property. And then he'll just go, what else is sold at that price? And how does mine compare? Now, if there's a pattern and everything else that's transacted in the last, 60, 90 days is a lot better, we have a problem, right? We screwed up and it's back to the drawing board. If everything else is, comparable, you go, well, house is a little bigger, but it's not nearly as nice. Okay, so maybe that would be logical. On the opposite end of the coin, right? Let's say all the houses that have transacted are not as nice as what you've got. Well, now you're just on the other end of the scale, right? You probably have underpriced the house, and you have to consider that. And then the other thing that he does is he'll go back in time like a couple of years. I think that was Monica who asked that question earlier. to me, you have to really need to do that and dive pretty deep. But if he has a super unique property, it's typically like I don't know, maybe it's like a couple acre property, a horse property or something, and he just wants to find a similar product, he will go back a couple of years. And I will say it's easier to do now when the market seems to have mellowed out a little bit than it would have been, years back when the market was appreciating at what, 10% a year. But even still, you could probably quantify that appreciation or come up with some kind of an average and make that adjustment, right? So, well, that property was the most similar property that sold 2 years ago, and the market appreciated 10%. So it was a million. Now it's probably $1.1 million property. I almost hate putting this slide here, guys, because I've talked to agents who are like, yeah, I'll just average the price of Zillow and Realtor.com, Trulia, and that's kind of like how I figure. Obviously, that's not a good way to price property. At the same time, I think they are a really good tool because I'm convinced that 100% of the sellers that I talk to know all of those numbers. So minimally, and they might be a sweet algorithm. A lot of times I'll price it, I'll go back and I'm like, wow, that's good to see that Zillow, Redfin, Trulia, Realtor.com all agree. By the way, I would never look at those first because your human brain is going to try to it's going to remember those numbers and you're going to find your way to meet those numbers. But at the end, it's never bad, I think, to just go check Realist. The title portals, I think, have some decent estimates. They may pull some off-market properties too that we're not seeing. So I'll always check those at the end. And then it's kind of nice because I might know what my seller's mindset is as far as pricing goes. And then that helps me be ready to present my analysis. Let's see here. How many slides left, guys? Oh, that's my last slide. Things to remember, and I also mentioned future pacing our sellers. I think future pacing is super important because at the end of the day, we could all come up with our evaluations and spend tons of time on the property. But at the end of the day, we don't set the market value. The sellers don't even set the market value. It's a free market. So like in any free market, we expose a product to the market. And obviously we do the best job we can presenting that product to the market. And then the buyers will determine the value. So I think it's important in every presentation when you're presenting price to let the seller know to expect that. And then the other thing that I think is super important is, I use this script all the time, right? It's like, well, Mr. Seller, there's only 3 things can happen when your house goes on the market. Number 1, we get flooded with activity and offers, in which case, which is what we're looking for, we drive the price up. The second thing that could happen, or the worst thing that could happen, is we get absolutely no activity, no showings, no offers, in which case, clearly we're wrong and the property is overpriced or the condition is wrong. Or number 2 is somewhere in between, where maybe we get good activity, we get some good showings, but we don't get any offers, or we get a low ball offer or something like that. In which case, we still have to probably improve the price or condition, or maybe it's just going to take us a little bit longer to get it sold. All right. So that's the end of my my spiel, guys. So if I think we have a little bit of time left if anybody wants to open it up and ask some questions.
Robert, I have a quick question.
Okay.
Usually, how long does it take for you to prepare a CMA?
5 or 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Robert. I have a question. Do you feel like you can underprice property?
No. I mean, there's probably more to that. Like I always tell, so when I'm presenting a price to a seller, I'll tell them like, hey, we could probably agree that your house, there's some kind of a range, right? And there's a couple ways to price property. We can intentionally overprice it, and try to wait for one offer and try to negotiate down from there, which is a bad way to go. We can severely and intentionally underprice property, in which case it will still drive up to what the property's worth, but we might offend some of the buyers that actually could have qualified and they just didn't like your approach. And then the other is to price it within that window, right? And so if it's a tight window, if it's 900 to 950,000, the lower we price within that window, the higher price we'll end up achieving. That's usually the way I handle it. But yeah, I don't really think you can underprice a property in this market, because we've all seen where somebody does and it bids up 300,000, but I wouldn't recommend it.
I have a question. I logged in a little bit late, so I'm hoping I'm not going to ask a question that someone already had asked.
Okay.
When preparing the CMA, what I do is I go through the search, and then 1 mile away, I provide an address that I'm interested in, which is the house that's going to be listed. And then on the MLS, it does indicate their view comparables within those parameters. That's how I use how I prepare the CMA, and then and then decide which homes are comparable, then add them onto the cloud CMA.
Okay.
That's okay, right? I mean, because you do it completely different. You map everything out, and I think you're a little bit more specific, and then you make adjustments. I found that a little bit too complicated. Whereas if I go into the search engine and I provide an address, and they'll give me all the homes within 1 mile radius that have sold, closed, pending, active, or whatever parameters I choose, and then I do a process of elimination at that point.
Well, I don't see how it's different, right? Because you're still trying to find the most comparable properties, correct?
Correct.
You're just starting off with a different approach. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's just a different approach, but the end result is probably the same. So yeah, I think I don't know exactly how you're doing. So your approach to me is more work, because you're starting with I think a ton of properties and looking at every single one. So I would probably start smaller, try to find comparables, and if I can't, I would expand out from there. You're just doing it the opposite way, I think, Rich, is where you're starting with everything, and then you're bringing it down. And I like I said, there's no right or wrong way to do it. So
okay, thank you.
So Robert, I have not done the adjustment type of CMA where you did add the pool, this much amount to that. How do you do the adjustment again? Let's say if your property has a pool and the comp doesn't have a pool, then do you minus the 30,000 or do you add 30,000? What do you do for adjustment?
Right. So if your house has a pool and the house that you're looking at doesn't, you need to add a pool to that price, to the price of that house.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
On the opposite end of that, let me go back to Tiffany. Same rule applies, right? So if there's a house that has an awesome pool and yours doesn't, then you're going to remove the pool from that house, essentially, to bring it up to comparable to your property. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay.
Robert, maybe I missed it, but how did you do that? I saw that you actually were clicking on is there at the bottom of the MLS, you can just add or subtract? Is that how it works, or sorry?
The adjustments, what exactly are you referring to?
Maybe I missed the how you adjusted at the bottom, if you click at one of the properties. And
so right now I'm in cloud. Yeah, right now I'm in cloud CMA. So if you go to the notes and adjustments, you just plug them in. It's awesome how it works. And then it totals it up for you. And then if you want to, now keep in mind though, when you do this, it affects all of this and even the price. So this house, you'll see it'll show 1,025,700. That's what it actually sold for. But then you'll see below my adjustments. Well, I'm calling it 1,105,700 house after my adjustments.
Oh, that makes sense. Sorry, it was I missed it. I missed it. I see. It was very fast notes and adjustment. Got it.
All right.
Awesome.
Anybody else?
Robert, do you mind sharing the last slides, the presentation, please? The last one. Just look at some points that you mentioned there.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll send this out too to Robert. And it's certainly not proprietary information. It's
not proprietary. However, Robert and I have come to an agreement that he will send it to me and I will send it to you for a very nominal fee, of which we,
how did I know that was going to be the case?
Robert Cofer and I will. Okay, well then he doesn't know the case, so then I get all the money. Yes.
Is this the slide that you wanted to see here?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I just like it the way you put it there. You know, when we talk to the sellers, you know, that we don't take the price, or they don't do it either. I like it the way you put it that way.
You know what? I've had I can't remember who I picked that up from. Somebody who was either an awesome agent, or it might have been an MFO coach or something. But yeah, it's like it's not me, right? Here's the information. We're all looking at the same information. I don't dictate the value, and you, Juan, as the owner, it sounds really weird, but you don't dictate the value of your home. In a free market, the market dictates the value. So I like to have that conversation, because then if I do need to have a price reduction, which is pretty rare, but it happens to all of us, right? I can I can anchor them back to that point. And I could go, hey, Juan, remember when we first met, we had this conversation. And then and I'll also probably supplement with, hey, one of three things can happen: multiple offers, nobody shows up, or somewhere in between. And right now we're somewhere in between. So the good news is people are showing up. The bad news is we probably have to improve either the price or condition to get, to achieve the goal, which is to sell it for at or above list price, right?
Good. Thank you, man.
Yep.
Well, this has been fantastic, Robert. I greatly appreciate you sharing this. The slides were great. I mean, I took down a few additional notes as well that I can use on some coaching calls and things like that. I gotta tell you, and this is one of your superpowers in general, but you really simplify it to make it easy to do. It's here's this, do this, say this. It's not complicated, but there are steps that you have to follow in order to get it priced correctly. So I thought you did a phenomenal job. It's obviously easy to see why there's a number of reasons why you take listings and they sell, but this very good stuff. So I really appreciate it. Great, great, great. So everybody do me a favor, because he is a busy man and he did this as a favor to me. So give him the round of applause that he deserves for taking time out of his day to give us a little insight into the world of him and his team and how they're generating so much business. So Robert, I greatly appreciate it, buddy. Thank you.
Yep.
And
Anytime.
I have used up my favor for the year. So same time next year, we'll do so.
I'll let you know. I'll let you know where I want to go to lunch next week. It's not going to be
Yeah.
cheap, but
You
put it on
got
the
it,
Thompsons.
buddy.
Put it on the Thompsons credit
You
card. I
got it.
don't need it unless
I
it's
got
on
the
their
company card right here, man.
There we go.
You got it. And well, I'm glad you live in the Glendora area and not the Beverly Hills area. So I think we'll afford it.
We could make the venture out that way.
I'll take it. I'll take it. It's closer to my house anyways.
There you go.
Good stuff. All right, buddy. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Everyone else, thank you for being on here today. Hopefully you got some good nuggets. I'm going to stop